Today, we do a midweek check-in following up on some news and notes from the Browns game, and we look forward to a big Sunday night showdown versus the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, I've been wanting this shit forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me. Brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the better. Okay. Hey. Yeah. Ain't no errors, baby, it's a new era. I wake up early feeling rich like I'm cash.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Sounds Gouda. My name is Jordan Olson and my co-host and best friend over here is Rob Ralph. As always, we would like to thank any new and returning listeners. We're always excited to be talking Packers football, and we have new episodes every Wednesday and Saturday on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And just remember, we do now have Monday recaps coming out following the game. So that's a new thing for us. Make sure to check out the Browns recap from a couple days ago if you haven't had a chance to check that out. Also working on getting some new subs. We are doing a raffle program, so every 50 new 50 new subscribers, we will raffle off some gear. So when we get to number 700, if you are a public subscriber between 650 and 700, we'll put your name in and you could win a hat. So definitely subscribe if you have not. And then also we've unlocked super chats, super stickers, and super thanks as just another way for you to interact with and support our channel. So just kind of diving in midweek here, got a couple discussion points. We don't really have an injury report yet out as we record this on Tuesday, so nothing major to report there. But we did have some transactions on Wednesday, actually 3. So they signed signed Brandt Banks to the active roster. They worked out some players on Monday, and they signed Jacoby Keeney James, a wide receiver, to the practice squad, which is pretty athletic, a 9.58 athletic score out of UMass. And probably the most surprising transaction that they made is they released Mecole Hardman. And the thing that I'm trying to figure out about that is they really didn't have to release Mecole Hardman. So kind of scratching my head a little bit on that move. But Rob, what do you make of these transactions? What do you like? What do you think? Were you surprised by the Mecole Hardman cut?
I mean, not completely. I mean, Brandt Banks, it does make sense with just kind of concerns that we're having with the offensive line, the injuries, etc., line combinations, whatever. So that makes total sense. I really liked what I was seeing from him in preseason specifically. I will be 1,000% transparent and honest with you guys. I've not watched any Jacoby Keeney James film. I don't know if you have, Jordan. Does have a good RAS score, so that definitely helps him out because we know that Goody likes his athleticism in this football team. So definitely going to go check him out, see what I can find on the interwebs, see what he can do. And then, yeah, the wide receiver, the Mecole Hardman of it all. Not quite sure what happened there. We were thinking he might be a roster cut, though, from even before when they were trying to put that all together. So I'm not quite sure. Kind of leaving me with a little bit of a head scratcher, too, as well.
Yeah, looks like Jacoby Keeney James was with the Detroit Lions at some point in time this offseason. But yeah, I don't know a lot about him either. Obviously, the Packers usher in one wide receiver and move on from another. I just, probably with Mecole Hardman, I would say that they probably are just kind of doing him that veteran's favor if he clearly is not going to get any run with this team. If it's not going to be now, Christian Watson's going to be back sometime after the bye week. I guess it's just time. But was surprising with all of the hype, some big plays that he did make during the preseason that, they don't give him a chance to be active on this roster. But if they activate him, that just takes away potential developmental snaps from Savion Williams and Matthew Golden. And, clearly they feel fine with Golden being the punt returner right now. They're not worried about that. They're comfortable with Savion Williams being the kick returner. So good luck with Mecole Hardman. I guess hopefully you catch on somewhere else, but not somewhere that's going to burn us down the line. So kind of a couple more things from the Browns game. I'm going to go over some snap count stuff, actually. I want to give some credit to Justis Mosequeda. I really like listening to him when he's on with Andy Herman and Pack-A-Day. But he also writes for the Acme Packing Company. Every week he puts out some snap count data and some analysis. So we're going to bring that up. Rob's going to share some of those charts. And we're just going to kind of give our own spin or take on what we make of a few of those things. Right. So I found it interesting that, so here's our offensive personnel breakdown. So for those of you who don't know, 11 personnel is when they have 3 wide receiver sets. How you read into this is the coding stands for 11 would be 1 tight end and 1 running back, or the first number is actually running back. So 1 running back, 1 tight end. If you're in 12 personnel, you have 1 running back and 2 tight ends. 21 personnel would be 2 running backs and 1 tight end. 13 personnel is 1 running back and 3 tight ends on the field. So obviously, if you have 1 running back and 3 tight ends,
you have 1 wide receiver left over, at least in 13 personnel.
Right, exactly. So that just gives you kind of a breakdown of how they're creating their formations. But you can see a pretty heavy shift this week to, kind of over your first 2 weeks, being a little bit more 50-50 with 12 personnel and 11 personnel to this week, really leaning heavily into 11 personnel. I don't know if we can glean a whole lot. Like, obviously, the offense didn't have a lot of huge success this past week, and I don't really know that I can blame that on us shifting to more heavy 11 personnel sets. Really, last year with Jordan's injury, Luke Musgrave's injury, we were in 11 personnel a majority of the season. So I don't know, Rob, what do you make in this shift from the first couple of weeks to, where we're at in week 3, leaning more into 11 personnel?
I mean, so 1 running back, 1 tight end, 3 wide receiver. I mean, it's a pretty balanced and it's a pretty common personnel group. I mean, I do think it's pretty suitable for both, the run and the pass game. You can do a lot of different concepts out of it. It's probably one of the most common.
Minus a few teams like the Ravens, the Bills.
Yeah.
I mean, 11 personnel really is the most popular, most utilized offensive, personnel grouping in the modern NFL right now. So,
yeah. I mean, 12. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think Matt LaFleur would have really liked to continue to lean into using 12 personnel more often, but we just haven't seen enough out of Luke Musgrave at this point in time. So, I know that that's written there by Justis. If you haven't read the article, go out there and read it. But I would agree with that. Luke Musgrave had a nice, little flash in week 2, but he was basically non-existent in this last week's game. So,
which is why Fitzpatrick is getting some more, obviously, playing time over Luke Musgrave. Where, I mean, in this game, you want more Fitzpatrick if you are going to be running more 12 personnel with Kraft, because he is the better blocking tight end. Now, if you were spreading the football out, doing more, 10 personnel, so 1 running back, 0 tight end, 4 wide receivers, more of a spread concept, then maybe you'd probably insert, a Luke Musgrave a little bit more. But yeah, if you wanted to button it up more, get after this defensive line, which I thought that they should have done a little bit more, just to wear it down, especially there in that second half, where they were getting a little bit better penetration. Not to say that was outworldly or anything crazy. It was still having a really difficult time, but they weren't hitting you at the line of scrimmage or even losing you yards on some of your runs like they were doing pretty consistently in that first half.
I find it fascinating. They showed the statistic, and I just like bang my head against the wall over and over again that Matt LaFleur is so wildly intent on like running the ball 50% of the time. But you'd imagine that if he really wanted to lean into running the ball that much, that, spreading things out and going to an 11 personnel set would be less conducive to that, like, especially, knowing what we knew about the Browns. They were going to stack the box. They were going to try to, shore up the run, make sure to stop Josh Jacobs. And with 11 personnel on the field, that should have been your indication that we're going to attack them through the air. So for some reason, we just kind of kept reverting over and over again to running Josh Jacobs, and that was obviously not very effective in this last week's game. So were you going to point out stuff with the quarterback snaps here, Rob? Or?
No, I was just moving on down the article. Again, this is Justis Mosequeda from ACME Packing Company, and he does a fantastic job. So we'll make sure to leave a link at this description too for this article, just so you can all check it out if you would like. But just really interesting here that he points out, for the first couple of weeks, Jordan Love, almost led the league in 12.5 air yards per attempt, the highest deep rate in the league through 2 weeks, to a passer who only threw 2 balls in this game of over 10 yards all game. The cover 2 hole shot to Matthew Golden, and that Romeo Dobbs pass ended up obviously being flagged here for that interference. So they definitely did. They wanted to spread Cleveland out and try and pick them apart, but it didn't work out too well for them. The Browns feel like they had that pretty well planned out for, I guess. So
yeah, we're not going to go through every one of these charts and breakdowns, but did want to point out why we're on the offense still. Go to the wide receiver snaps once. If you look at this breakdown, it's pretty clear how much they trust Romeo Dobbs and want him into this. I mean, his snaps are really 2-to-1 to every other player who's a wide receiver or receiving weapon on this team. So he's going to play outside. They want him to be on the field. I think that they like his blocking ability and just really all the things that he brings to the table. So he is one of Jordan's most consistent threats. And I just think the Packers put their money where their mouth is by that snap total alone there, right?
what did you think of this too in the slot? You're bringing this up from previous though, but Dontavian Wicks leading in slot receptions over here, at least in week 3.
Yeah, I have to admit, right? I think going into this last game, we thought with Jaden Reed going out that they were going to play Matthew Golden heavily in the slot, and it seems like they want to trust Dontavian Wicks more there. I think this just goes back to the Packers' philosophy a little bit about working in rookies. Even the best rookies, they definitely, I don't think, lean into giving super heavy snaps and opportunities to. Clearly, Matt LaFleur, despite the drops last season, which Wicks, I mean, you got to give him credit. He's looked great. He hasn't dropped any balls really, and no easy ones anyways this season. But, I would say that Matt LaFleur has definitely leaned into, a little bit more of I'm going to trust my proven commodities and I'm going to put Wicks in the slot. I know that he can win in space. I'm going to put Dobbs out there on the end. I know that he's, a viable X for me. And then I'm going to mix and match personnel from there. So we'll see if that trend continues. But, if Dontavian Wicks keeps winning, they're going to keep playing him in that slot role. So, and I think you noted that, John Fitzpatrick is starting to outsnap Luke Musgrave a little bit there. A lot of that probably has to do with his blocking. But Luke is still not winning one-on-one as much as you'd probably like him to. And if he was, you'd have to imagine he'd be on the field a little bit more than that. So
Yep, absolutely.
Go down to those defense. So we're gonna skip over the whole offensive line. That's just a mess created by injuries and who knows what else. But what'd you make of these defensive personnel groupings? There's some very interesting and unique groupings in here, a lot of which are created by the fact that we have a guy like Micah Parsons.
Pretty crazy. As you can see here from Justis. At least this is a goal line look, but Packers in a 1 defensive back goal line look. First time all year they haven't had for at least 4 defensive backs on the field. Now it's goal line, so obviously they're expecting them to run it. And if they don't, well, I don't know. guess they're gonna have a big man out there trying to cover somebody else. But really, really unique stuff. They're starting to do a lot more with the cheetah, the cheetah type of looks. Whether that's Gary and that's Parsons on the outside and Luke Van Ness at the 3-tech spot with Devontae White on the other side of him, or I believe if I can go to it here.
Well, go back up for a second, Rob. So let's
Yeah.
just, for people who maybe haven't read this article or aren't following along, keep going back up to those personnel groupings once. So no, all the way back up to the chart. Yep. So, like Rob said, Cheetah really stands for when, so a traditional 4-3 base is when you have two defensive ends and two
Two
defensive
defensive
tackles on.
tackles. Yep.
Yep. So that would be what would happen if we are in the nickel and we had that regular traditional nickel front. We'd take off one of the linebackers then, and then we'd bring in an extra defensive back that would be a base nickel, right? So if we have a cheetah nickel, instead of having the two defensive tackles and the two defensive ends, we're down to one true defensive tackle. And then, like you mentioned, they're bringing in a third edge player to play that 3-tech, whether that's, Baron Sorrell, Lucas Van Ness, and they've been mixing and matching along that front. So, very interesting because it's bringing a lot of extra juice in some of these combinations. And I think you were going to show that cheetah penny.
Yeah.
That is a very interesting formation that there's a picture of. So scroll back up there, Rob. One more image. Actually click on that, expand that if you're able to.
It took me off. So here.
Yeah, that's good enough. But if you can follow along, the one stand-up guy in the back is Micah Parsons playing the off-ball linebacker. But in this formation, this is the cheetah pennant formation where Carl Brooks is the nose tackle. You have Baron Sorrell and Rashawn Gary as your 3-techs, and then you have Quay Walker and Edrin Cooper walked up as your stand-up edge defenders. So I think on this particular snap that this pass rush actually created Rashawn Gary's sack, or one of Rashawn Gary's 2 sacks in the game. So
it did, yep. And then I'll show you. There's a video of it here too. If you all don't remember, here you go. Boom, there it is. And like you were mentioning though too, we didn't see much of this creativity, especially in that second half.
Go ahead and play this look from the behind. This was interesting to kind of see this play develop. But
it stunts and twists around. Micah does.
I mean, clearly the offensive line had no idea what to do with that, and basically created an opportunity for Rashawn Gary to be a free rusher through there. So hopefully Jeff Hafley keeps dialing some more stuff like this up. I think if you would have dialed a few more formations like this up in this Browns game, and we would have gotten to Joe Flacco a few more times, we might have put this one away. But
and then Jordan, what about this one, man? The Cheetah 4-3 with Lucas Van Ness playing the nose tackle. That is an interesting one.
Yeah, I mean that's a nasty one, right? So Lucas Van Ness playing the nose. Parsons is right inside of Edrin Cooper there. I believe that's who that is standing up outside of Parsons. Is that
or
Cooper?
Is it McDuffie? No, that's Cooper right there. I think that's McDuffie.
That's McDuffie. Yeah. So there's your 3 linebackers, right? Because Quay's playing the mic, and then Cooper's back there, and McDuffie's walked up. So
yeah, interesting stuff.
Yeah. So I don't know. Just a couple notes there. Kind of getting back to some other things. We did want to touch on some PFF notes. A couple things that I thought were very interesting. Now that we have the grades for that game, Rob's going to share that with you as well. So if you're following along on YouTube or Spotify, you've got those visuals. If you're on the audio side, definitely check out this episode on YouTube because you definitely get a little better feel for it with the visuals we have available. So, how brutal is that? That essentially the 5 players who played the majority of the snaps at
For all
offensive
offensive
line
line.
are our 5 lowest rated players on offense for the game.
Yeah, and for those on audio, so Apple Podcasts, you can watch video on Spotify, but sometimes I know not everybody does this. So both Spotify and Apple Podcasts, I'll just put in there. But the lowest graded from 1 to 5 are literally Rashid Walker, Jordan Morgan, number 2. Number 3 is Aaron Banks. Number 4 is Anthony Belton. Number 5 is Elton Jenkins. So
rounding out the rest of the offensive line group, Zach Tom had 1 snap, right? So he had a 0 pass block grade on that. So he was basically at a 60 grade, which is basically their starting point. So, you can't really lean into that at all. Well, you kind of messed with the rankings on me, Rob.
it's all right. There you go.
And then where do we have Sean Ryan? Had like a pretty slightly below average game, 54.3. But he was your highest graded offensive lineman of the day, and had the best pass blocking grade of the group at a 24.8, which is absolutely atrocious and pathetic. You had Aaron Banks registering a 12.1%, pass block grade, and Rashid Walker at 15.7. That's ugly.
Yeah, pretty bad. But then you come up here to the run block. This is where I was starting to see, like, hey, man, why don't we just lean into this a little bit more? Jordan Morgan, I think that this is his best run blocking game so far of the year, ironically enough, where they all got murdered on pass protection. I mean, yeah, he had a pretty good one. Him and Sean Ryan had some pretty good. I want to say pretty good average. Sean Ryan had a 62.3 and Jordan Morgan had a 61.3, but that was much better than in the deep dark red of the pass blocking that they were getting for this game.
Yeah. I mean, Jordan Love, this I think just says the world for really everybody else on this offensive side. But Jordan Love was our 4th highest graded player. And he had a score of he was our 8th highest rated player overall, but he had a 59.0 PFF grade for the game. So very, very average performance from Jordan Love, just a very average performance overall from the offense. Fitzpatrick gets a nice bump because he caught that touchdown, but pretty ugly. Defensive side of the ball, really the only couple things I wanted to point out there is that, these grades would really reflect that Lucas Van Ness and Quay Walker are really coming into their own over these last couple weeks.
Sorry.
You're okay. Kingsley Angabari had a great game. He only had 15 total snaps, but Lucas Van Ness had 30 snaps, had nearly a 90 grade, 89.9, 83.
One of his best games, if not his best, I think.
Yep. And Quay Walker had a really solid performance too, 81.0 overall grade on 66 snaps. So I think that's playing every defensive snap. I think that was 66 was the highest totals. Really just a well-rounded game overall from Quay Walker. You can see Micah Parsons continues to make an impact too on his 51 snaps, a 90.9 pass rush grade, creating 5 total pressures. So Lucas Van Ness had 6 pressures on the game.
Yeah. Flipping it over to the worst performing overall grades. Evan Williams at number 1 on 63 total snaps. Javon Bullard here, 37 total snaps. He had a 47.3. Barron Sorrell only on 6 snaps. So kind of take that with a grain of salt. Devontae Wyatt here at number 4 on 38 total snaps, 14 for run defense and 24 for pass rush. He had a 56.8. And then Keyshawn Nixon, I thought there were some really bad penalties on Keyshawn, just some really bad penalties in general, but the one in the red zone was just absolutely atrocious. Keyshawn Nixon here at number 5 at 63 total snaps. He had a 57.4 rounding out 1 through 5.
Yeah, so I don't know. I really don't have anything else to say. It's Tuesday night as we record this. Really just ready to move on and watch this Browns game here. I don't know. You ready to transition into some Cowboys stuff, Rob? Since
Yep.
we're all, I think, ready to move on from that
Put that
Browns
one to
game.
bed.
So,
Yep.
yeah. So not quite a burn the tape kind of game, but definitely one you wanna learn the right lessons from and move on. The chatter's already kind of starting to get going about Micah Parsons' return to Dallas. I think it's pretty funny, the conversation around there'll be no Micah Parsons tribute video. I don't know. What do you make of that, Rob?
Yeah, I think that's just Jerry Jones being Jerry Jones. I mean, I don't know. Like, yeah, if you were Jerry Jones, let me ask you this: would you have given Micah Parsons a tribute video?
I'm online with Jerry Jones because here's where I'm at. You give tribute videos. I mean, and we're not talking about retiring a number here, putting somebody's name in the Ring of Honor, but you give tribute videos to somebody who meant an awful lot to your organization for a really long time, right? Like if, Aaron Rodgers is the kind of guy that you give a tribute video to when he returns to Green Bay for the first time. He spent 15 years in your organization. He won you a championship, right? To switch gears, if and when, sadly, that Giannis is not a Buck at some point in time, let's just say that this is his last season in Milwaukee, right? That's the kind of player that when he comes back, even Chris Middleton, if you're talking Milwaukee Bucks
100%.
basketball, right?
Yeah.
One of the, 4 or 5 best players in franchise history. There's an argument that he might even be a top 3 player in franchise history, certainly by some of his statistics, won a championship, multi-time All-Star, right? And you're talking about a significant time investment with that player on that team. And, I know Micah Parsons shined really bright for the Dallas Cowboys for his 4 years, but he still only played 4 years in Dallas. They did not win a championship. He did not win an MVP, did not win a Defensive Player of the Year. I don't think he did. Did he win Defensive Player of the Year?
I don't think he did.
I think he was like second in voting like twice, but I don't think he did it, right?
Yeah.
Really, and I think if people are expecting him to get a video, I also think that's a little ludicrous, especially given the circumstances. You just had a big standoff with him, and whatever decision was made, you separated. So if he wants to use that as a slight, though, and motivation for this week, I'm all for it.
Yeah. Leave the tribute video to the Green Bay Packers when we get a couple of chips back under our belt with Micah Parsons. Then he'll get some tribute video.
Yeah, two contracts and 2 championships later with the Packers, then we'll give him the tribute video and hang Parsons' name in the Ring of Honor there next to Mr. Sharps and Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers will get his name put up there first.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think this is really good conversation and controversy. I don't really say controversy, but like I could see both sides of that in a way. So fans, people who's listening, let us know. Would you, if you were Jerry Jones, or maybe it's another player from another team in another situation, would you give a tribute video? I think Jordan brings up some really good and astute points too about being more on the Jerry Jones side. Definitely makes sense. I think they did give a tribute video to Ezekiel Elliott, but he played for a lot longer. How long did he play in Dallas for?
I mean, I don't like to guess and be wrong a lot of the time, but I want to say at least 6 or 7 seasons, which I mean, that's definitely the majority of an NFL career at that point in time for most guys.
And there wasn't any drama with Ezekiel Elliott.
Yeah, they just moved on from Zeke, right? And he came back. It'd be kind of curious, right? Would Kenny Clark be the kind of guy that the Packers would give a tribute video to? I kind of honestly would be more into that. A guy who played 9 years, who knows, was a first round draft pick, so meets a lot of the same criteria. But I think 9 years of service and the 3 Pro Bowl nods is, he's likely to play out his contract in Dallas, and who knows if he'll sign another contract after that, So 9 out of his 11 NFL years will probably come in a Green Bay uniform.
Yeah, I'd be totally down for a KC tribute video. That'd be sweet, man.
Well, the game's in Dallas, so we're not going to see that. So no, we won't keep you on here too long. Come back on Saturday, and we're going to have our full Cowboys preview before the big Sunday night game. I'm sure there'll be plenty of other things for us to talk about. One thing I did want to note, though, is we are transitioning in the Browns from the team that was most heavy in man coverage so far through 3 weeks. That didn't work out so well for us last week. To the Cowboys, which are the team that's played man coverage the least. They only play man coverage on defense 3% of the times. It was 42% of the time for Browns snaps, and it's 3% of the time versus the Cowboys. What do you think that is going to be advantageous in getting this offense going this week? The Packers playing against more zone?
Yeah, I think so. Not as good of a defensive line. Hopefully our offensive line can hold up a little bit better. We've talked ad nauseum about how good the Browns defensive line is. It's very, very, very good. Not the best. Yeah, our wide receivers are better zone type of wide receivers, in my opinion. Now, when Christian Watson comes back, both him and Matthew Golden on the field together, if you're going to play man on that, depending on what you do with Wicks, if he's still going to be on the inside like they were playing him at least a lot more in week 3 in the slot, woo, that's a lot of speed. That's a lot of things you can do with the safeties right there too. So, but in this specific game against the Cowboys, yeah, I think that they could do a lot of damage, create a lot of I don't want to say mismatches, but create some good play calling, get some intermediate, some deep shots too. Maybe Matthew Golden can finally get his first deep ball taken to the house. But yes, I love this matchup a whole lot more for a multitude of different reasons for the Packers offense.
And I'm just kind of thinking of a couple factors, not to make any excuses for the Packers' lack of offensive output in the last game. But, the second half of last year, the Packers were noted to struggle against man coverage. You saw Jayden Reed. I think he made a commitment in the offseason to trying to get better against man coverage, and so did Tucker Kraft. Those were points of emphasis straight from their mouths going into the offseason. Both came into the training camp saying that they spent some time on that they're hoping that that's better part of their game. Obviously, Tucker Kraft a little banged up last week. No Jayden Reed last week.
Jayden Reed would have helped.
I think so, with the emphasis that he put on it, even though that was a big knock on him. So you could see that they were trying to go to Wicks, probably their most proven one-on-one route winner. But if you had a healthy Tucker Kraft and you had a Jayden Reed who had worked on separating in man coverage, maybe there would have been a little bit more open there for him. So, but that's all we got for you, folks. All right, that's all I got. Rob, you got anything else you want to add before we?
Nope. Let's look forward to a big bounce back game against the Cowboys in Dallas this weekend. We love playing in the Big D. Had a lot of good success there, knock on wood. I think that we will be able to bounce back. But that is all that we have for you today, Packers fans. Know that we do have new content every Wednesday and Saturday on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Please make sure to like, sub, and follow us on those platforms. Thank you for listening. Please share with a friend or a family member or any other Packers fan that likes to nerd out as much as we do. Yeah, we're both on socials too as well. I'm at Sounds Good Out with 3 A's, and Jordan is at Wilson Jordan. But until next time, Packers Nation, we hope that you have a good morning, a good afternoon, and a good night. Take care. Go Pack Go.
Been wanting this shit forever.